You are listening to the I Choose My Best Life podcast with Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, a show that is dedicated to helping you live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally. For additional resources, visit ichoosemybestlife.com.
How can you keep your energy, happiness, creativity, and relationships fresh and thriving in the midst of never-ending family demands, career pressures, and the stress of everyday life? Learn about best-selling book Sacred Rest and discover the 7 types of rest you need most by visiting restquiz.com. Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Saundra, and you're listening to I Choose My Best Life. Today, we're chatting with Sue Bowles. She is the author of This Much I Know, The Space Between. And we're going to spend some time today discussing the topic of courage. How do we choose courage when we are faced with difficult situations? So, Sue, I want to take a moment to welcome you to the show. And if you would, just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Dr. Saundra. I've been looking forward to this. Well, I'm a master certified life coach, but long before I got to that point, I experienced a lot of trauma in my life, all the way back from starting in first grade. When I was 7 years old, I had a traumatic event. So that trauma, as you may know, what rewired my brain, and it really set me off on a wrong trajectory for a good portion of my life. And it came out in a number of different ways. And through a lot of different things that you and I will start talking about here in a minute, I have found the place, I chose courage myself and came to the place where I dared to believe that I mattered. And that became the springboard for me. And it's been great to now let God loose in my life, for lack of a better phrase, so that his healing can really take root in my life. And then I can really start walking in the purpose he has for me.
Yes. And one of the topics you share about is emotional courage. Mm-hmm. And I know that Psychology Today defines this as a pivotal instant in time in which we take action. What would you say was your pivotal point, and why was it so significant in your story?
Oh, wow. The most pivotal one came in 2014. There was a movie came out called Ragamuffin. It was based on the life of the late Christian musician Rich Mullins. And I saw it, and it was a really hard watch for me, especially the first 20 minutes, because I related so much to the things that they were portraying about Rich. Later in that summer, the movie producer and family and friends of Rich Mullins who were involved in the movie producing decided to do a retreat based on the themes of the movie. And one of those themes had to do with being authentic and living a maskless life. Had to deal with parent-child relationships and how that affects your relationship with God, and talked about living a life of reckless faith. So it took a little bit until I really gave in to God and signed on to go to that retreat. The backstory to it is that my brother had just been released from serving 18 months in prison. And when he got home in August of 2014, he ran into some people in town who commented, "I haven't seen you for a while. Where have you been?" And he just boldly said, "In prison." And in my judgment, if anyone had a reason to be shameful or ashamed of his story, it was my brother at that moment in time. And his authenticity and boldness with that person really challenged me. So I signed on for this retreat, and I looked at my counselor and said, "Get me ready." I looked at her and said, a real forlorn sound in my voice. And I said, "I just want to be authentic." So we spent a lot of time dealing with my fears. So by the time I got to retreat, it's called walking stick retreats. By the time I got to retreat, I had been imploding. The childhood event I referenced real quick was I was raped by a classmate when I was 7 years old. And I didn't tell anyone until my senior year of college. So it became a 15-year secret. So in 2014, I was just starting to deal with it over 4 decades after the event. So I was imploding because I had also developed an eating disorder, and emotions are not the friend of an eating disorder. So I was dealing with the traumatic event, having to figure out these feelings and start figuring out how to not engage my eating disorder all at the same time. So by the time I got to the retreat, I had called myself the holy exception. I believed the lie that I was too screwed up, too far gone, and too everything, and that I was a waste of space, and there's no way God could love me or use me. And one of the staff members has since said that first retreat was like a Hail Mary for me, daring to believe, hoping to believe that I was lovable and that God's kids could love me. And while I went into that retreat calling myself the holy exception, I left there saying for the first time and starting to believe that Jesus Christ not only loves me, he absolutely loves me and he likes me. And he's absolutely head over heels in love with me and crazy about me. And that started things. From there, continue each year took a different step. The first year, what the pivot point of that first year was that I had to own my story because I was in denial about my story. I didn't like my story. And I had to come face to face with it and admit to myself everything that had happened to me. And then that retreat continued to build on each other. So the second year, I had to grieve my story because there is a lot of loss in my story that had not been grieved. And I had to let myself grieve it. And then the third year, the biggest pivot point came. And the nugget I walked away with was that I am valuable to God. So it was like a 3-point pivot, but each step had to build on the next to really start walking in what God, in how God has created me to be.
This is such a great conversation, Sue, because I think too often with authenticity, as you mentioned, when you were describing your brother's situation, we come up with reasons and excuses and all of these causes why certain parts of our story we should be ashamed of, or we should keep tucked away, or we should hide. And what happens with that is it makes us feel like there are parts of us that are simply really kind of removes us from being lovable, kind of disqualifies us from being loved or cared for or treasured and cherished as God really does. That's how he looks at us. And so I think it's such an important story because it helps us to see that part of the courage is even the courage to believe that you're lovable.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And that is such a key point. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is John 4:50. And it simply says, the man took Jesus at his word and departed. And that has been a real foundation for me when I start buying the lie, when I start listening to the whispers, when I don't take those thoughts captive. Somehow the Spirit just reminds me of that. And if this official could come to Jesus saying, my son is dying, would you come see him? The man just wanted Jesus to come. And I was reading it before we got on, and Jesus said, unless you guys see signs and wonders, you're not going to believe. So instead, Jesus heals the man's son when the man's a good day away. So then he goes back, and his servants meet him part way. And they say, your son is alive. And he asks when it happened. And it ended up the time that it happened was the exact time that Jesus said, your son is saved. And the man took Jesus at his word and departed. And I think of that, and why can't I do that? If that man who was an official living in the time that they lived in had the courage to take Jesus at his word and go back and trust that his son was going to be saved, why can't I, when we know we have the rear view mirror view that man didn't have? So yeah, I love that verse because it's so true. We disqualify ourselves. And that's not what Jesus says in the Bible. The Bible is so chock full of what Jesus thinks about us. I love the idea. It's something that I've really grasped. It's like, God thinks we're a good idea. Why can't we take him at that word and depart with that as well?
That's so good. That is so good. I want to dive a little bit into your book. Your book is called This Much I Know, The Space Between. So I want you to go a little bit deeper into what is the message behind this particular book? What is it that you are walking the reader through in this book?
The book started out as wanting to share lessons in life that I have learned. And as I found my healing, it took a different turn. And the concept of the book is twofold. The first half is This Much I Know is my story. All of us have our story, and it's the one thing no one can take from us. No matter what has happened in our lives, no matter what has been taken from us, our story is the one thing no one can take from us. So the first half is my story in much more detail, and it rides the undercurrent of hope. And throughout that whole first half, that's part of the message being shared with the reader, is just that undercurrent of hope in the midst of all these losses that I talk about and I've shared a little bit about. But then the second half, the space between, talks about the reality of healing. It talks about the healing journey that God took me on, but it casts light on that hope so that undercurrent of hope becomes a grace wave instead, that I have how to ride the grace waves as you're walking your healing journey. And it's been very encouraging and insanely humbling to read the reviews from people who have read it. And one of my favorite ones, someone told me that when she first read it, at first she didn't know if she wanted to throw it across the room, hit me, or cry a tear of thankfulness, because all of those were what she felt. And now, to hear from her the healing that she has found in her life is very humbling. When I wrote, This Much I Know of the Space Between, I did not know what God was going to do with it. And it has been very humbling, very humbling.
Well, I think one of the things we have to keep in mind with courage is that it is a part of our growth. It's a part of the process that God uses to help us grow in our faith, to help us grow in our relationship with Him, to help us grow into the people and that He would have us to be. What would you say to someone who, when they think about courage, they don't feel like they already have it within them?
There's a phrase that a friend of mine uses as she leads a ministry, and it's something her counselor told her early on. And it was, I know you don't feel the hope or feel you can carry it right now. I will carry it for you until you're strong enough to carry it for yourself. When we are starting our healing journey, odds are we don't feel the strength. We are so weighed down with everything that life has thrown at us and thrown on us that it's hard enough just to pick up the phone and ask for help. And sometimes that's all we can do to take that first step. And we need people to come alongside us who will carry hope for us. And what I would say to those people that are struggling with that is there are many people who would count it a privilege to walk that journey with you, to hold hope for you, until you can start holding it for yourself. Because to walk this healing journey is not painless. I don't know any growth that is not painful. And unfortunately, there's no way around the healing mountain. You have to go through it. That may not sound real encouraging, but at the same time, I am here as a voice of hope, as one who has walked that journey and is still walking it. My mom passed away just 2 years ago, and I'm still discovering who I am after being her caregiver for 8 years. But as we continue to walk, as we continue to journey, my business name is called My Step Ahead, and the concept is that you only have to be a step ahead to help the person behind you. So while I'm still reaching out to my counselor for help, I can reach out to the person behind me with the stuff that I have gone through and the things I have learned, and be that support to them so that together we have a human chain of support. Each person has something to offer right now. No matter what has happened, there is still something that you have gone through or experienced that can help somebody else, even while you figure it out. One of the biggest lies to not choosing courage is that we have to have it all figured out first, that I don't have it together. I haven't arrived, whatever that means. And that is one of the lies of the enemy to keep us on the sideline. Because if the enemy can render us feeling useless, then he has just picked off one of God's kids who God has designed to reach so many people. So if we have to fight that lie as well. And that's just one other thing. Part of courage is choosing to let God use you where you are while you still figure out where you want to get to.
Yes, let God use you where you are on your journey to where he's taking you. Absolutely. Now, Sue is a master certified life coach. And so I want to take full advantage of that and all the experience you have. So what are some really practical tips and tools that you can help us use to help us build our courage and to begin to choose courage on a regular basis?
Great question. Start small. And I say that because when we have goals in mind, we see the end. We know where we want to get, but we have absolutely no idea how to get there. And that's what I get to specialize in as a master certified life coach. That I specialize in that. I work with people who are feeling stuck, who aren't sure how to get where they want to go. And I hold hope for them. And we gain momentum together. So the first thing I would say is start small. What is the next step in your goal? I've had a client, we'll call him Jim. And Jim wanted to have coffee with somebody. And this was during COVID when social anxiety was so high, and social anxiety is still so high. And Jim was very concerned about all the mechanics of scheduling coffee. So we broke it down of what did he feel comfortable with first. And we worked with that. And the first step was simply making contact. And to see Jim's smile on his face and the eyes light up with a glimmer of hope when he made that contact. But then the next step was keeping the appointment. And the concerns there were, what are we going to talk about? What if there's a lot of silence? How do we handle that? And we started working with that. And then the appointment was kept. And Jim came back again and was all smiles. Now here we are a couple years later, Jim's wanting to lead a Bible study. So start small, focus on the next step in the goal and build momentum. And part of that means you're facing the fears so that they lose the grip they have on you, because those fears are what is keeping you sidelined. And again, this is where coaching can help you, because these are the things that coaches like myself can help you identify and help you take your next step to get where you want to go and you're not sure how to get there. So definitely the first step is just start small. First of all, reach out for support. And then second of all, be honest and have the courage to start putting it out there to say, I dare to believe that I matter because I want to get somewhere and I'm not sure how to get there. So this person's going to be able to help me with that. And then team up with that person. But then realize that just start small. The old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Same thing. Because once you start taking those first small steps and build some momentum, then things really start happening.
Now, you hinted at this just a little bit, but you've actually launched a movement called Dare to Believe. So yes. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can interact with it.
Yes, the Dare to Believe movement was launched, again, through my Step Ahead. And the pivot point, you asked me about my pivot points. And I said that the third year, the key pivot point was when I realized that I was valuable to God. That is when things started to change for me. That's when the book started happening and everything else has happened since. And in talking with people, when I'm out on stage speaking and doing podcasts and presenting at conferences and whatever else I'm doing a church retreat here in another month. With all those things, what I hear from people is the hidden question, and they may not ask it point blank, but it's the undercurrent of their fears is, do I matter? Does God really love me? Can I be used by God? Is it too late for me? So much has happened. And I have come to know over the last few years while I've been doing this, that if the foundational seed of daring to believe that you matter is not planted and watered and nurtured, no change will be permanent. So yes, we have launched the Dare to Believe movement. And those are the things we talk about. Those things we're getting ready to just put a whole bunch of content on the website. And we're going to talk about courage. We're going to talk about fear. We're going to talk about self-talk, because the concept, again, dare to believe that you matter. What does it mean when someone dares you? They're challenging you to do something out of your comfort zone because they see something in you that you may not be able to see in yourself yet. It goes back to that holding hope until you can hold it for yourself. So we're talking about these things. We're going to talk about our safety and our comfort zone, having the hard conversations with ourselves and others. And we're going to talk again about the idea, the truth, that God thinks you're a good idea. So how the best way to interact is go to daretobelievemovement.com. Sign up for the updates. We've got a lot of stuff coming out. When people sign up for that, I have a PDF. It's called The First 4 Steps of Healing that I send them. And it's taken from the stuff from my book, This Much I Know, The Space Between, so that they can start building that foundation for themselves right away. It's going to be real exciting. Over the next few months, we're going to be launching an online community, which will provide a safe place for people to share their concerns, encourage each other to find hope in someone else's story, and then realize that your story also gives someone else hope. And suddenly we're all going to be light posts of hope because we're holding on to hope for other people.
Yes, amen. So for that person who might be listening right now and they're thinking, I don't know who I'm a step ahead of. I feel like I'm 2 steps behind everybody else. What encouragement do you have for them?
Great question. And it's easy for us to think, because again, we're judging ourselves and we are our own worst critics, that I don't have any meaningful life experience. But take out that word meaningful and just look at your life experience. Because whatever you have gone through is what can be used to help someone. Real quick example. When Mom passed, 6 months after she passed, somebody at the office lost her father tragically. So another person and myself went out to the house, and there was concern expressed for me of, are you going to be okay? Because you're still figuring this out yourself. I said, I guess we're going to figure this out, aren't we? We got there, we spent a little over an hour. And yes, there were tears at the start, but by the time our time there started winding down, the person who had lost her father started asking me questions. They were going to the funeral home that day. Well, what about this? What do I expect? What do I bring? What questions are they going to ask? And all these things. And I had just walked through it 6 months ago. And I wasn't having this conversation without tears because my heart was very raw and broken. And I was trying to figure out where on earth I just landed. I by no means had it together. I was a mess. Yet it was a life experience I had just walked. And I wasn't that far ahead. I was only a step ahead of her. And yet I was able to help her. And I later found out that she was telling other people that was the most impactful thing and so helpful because it waylaid her fears. So take out that word meaningful life experience, because that's us putting a judgment on it and an evaluation on it, and just look at life experience. Maybe you're a mom who has gone through having 2 under 2. And there's someone else you're having coffee with who's just starting that. Or maybe you're a single woman at church and you understand when a new single woman comes into church and trying to figure out, where do you fit in? Any life experience we have had is fair game for God to use. And it's up to us to make ourselves available for him to use it. We set ourselves on the sideline because we think we discount and we downplay the things that we have experienced. No experience is meaningless, and every experience can be used by God to help encourage and empower and support someone else. It may seem very ordinary to ourselves because it's what we've lived. I'm a mom with 2 kids. This is my thing. I'm a mom that has teens, and I'm trying to figure out which sport game do I go to, and how do I pick up Johnny from practice, and how do I get Susie to her job all at the same time while my husband's coming home from work and would like to eat a dinner. So no matter what the experience has been, it is meaningful in God's eyes. And we have to choose the courage to let him use us in our everyday experiences.
So well said. And I think that is the encouragement, that God uses it all, that there is no differentiation because of how we judge it. He uses it all.
Right.
So I want to make sure that everyone knows how to get in touch with you, how to get a copy of your book, This Much I Know, The Space Between, and how to stay on top of the different things that you're doing with your different movements. So what are the best contacts for you?
Sure. The best one for Dare to Believe is daretobelievemovement.com. And then to everything else with the book and my speaking and everything else is at SueBowles.com. And you'll find everything right there. Again, if you go to daretobelievemovement.com, sign up for the updates. I'd be happy to get that PDF to you, the first 4 steps of healing. And then go to SueBowles.com and you can order my book, This Much I Know, The Space Between, and keep up with me for where I'm speaking and all that other stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sue, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Saundra. This was great.
Until next time, everyone, live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally.